Okay, is my slide visible?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Majjanatimrantasya Jnanajanashalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhulati Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Udapata Sri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Niram Stamsa Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paljana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitam Cha हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय हरे कृष्णा. So the topic for today's session is titled Mahat or Principles of Material Creation. So as we know, for the past few weeks, we have been covering the various thematic subject matters or the main topics of Gita, starting from Ishvara. We had one session titled Supreme Absolute Truth, followed by Jivas, living entities. And last week was our session titled Prakriti or Material Nature. So today's topic is also related to Prakriti, material nature, but it's a bit more in-depth compared to last week's overall session on Prakriti. So just some details regarding material nature, or actually today's focus is more on a very specific subtopic related to Prakriti, which is Mahatattva. It is actually it's like the storehouse of all the ingredients required for creation of the material nature. So there are some details given by Srila Prabhupada in the introduction to Gita. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna surrendered to Sri Krishna, and consequently, this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. So here the important keyword is anxiety. As we know, the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual world, uh, they are called Vaikuntha, meaning that the place where there is no anxiety. So as long as we are trapped in this material world, we can never be free from anxiety. So in order to liberate ourselves from material bondage, a good starting point. So studying the Gita is a good starting point to learn about how we can liberate ourselves from material bondage. So that's why regarding the five principal subject matters, Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, followed by Kala, Karma. So Jivas, that is living entities, we are all originally part and parcel of Ishvara, but due to our propensity to become enjoyers and controllers, we have descended into this material world. And because of that, we are subject to the four types of suffering, the vicious cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, and many other miseries, it's all due to our desires to become Ishvara and Purusha. So the only way to liberate ourselves from this material bondage is to get rid of such desires and realize who is the soul, Ishvara and Purusha. However, it is also important to realize, to understand in depth regarding this material world, so that we only then we will actually not only will develop the desire to go back to the spiritual world, but by doing so, we will also really understand our foolishness of desiring to be Ishvara and Purusha, and because of which we have descended to this material world, which is also called Dukalayam Ashashwatam by Krishna in chapter 8 of Gita. So the complete whole, the personality of Godhead has immense potencies. How Krishna is acting in different potencies is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. This phenomenal world or material world in which we are placed is also complete in itself, because the 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation, according to Sankhya philosophy, are completely adjusted to produce complete resources which are necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. So in Srimad Bhagavatam also, in the second canto, it is stated that the material world is actually 1/4 of the entire creation, or the energy of Krishna, and the spiritual world is 3/4 of his entire energy. However, this material world itself only consists of these 24 elements, which are the raw, like the raw materials which were used to create this entire material world. So by focusing more about the principle of Mahat, we will focus on understanding these 24 elements, of which the entire material creation has become manifest. Actually, the meaning of Prakriti itself, it refers to the stage. Prakriti is a stage in which this the Mahatattva becomes manifest. When the Prakriti becomes unmanifest, it is called Pradhana. However, in both stages, the Mahatattva remains the same, in the sense that there's the same set of 24 elements in both stages. It's just that when these elements interact with each other and drive the entire process of creation, then Prakriti becomes manifest. Otherwise, when the cycle of annihilation occurs, then Prakriti becomes unmanifest, becoming Pradhana. So actually, if we look at the word itself, the word called, like in material nature, the root word form had started in the Gita from the moment Krishna started to speak in chapter 2 itself. So if we remember in Gita chapter 1, Arjuna was complaining about not being able to face his relatives in the battle, and he refused to fight them. And then in chapter 2 only, in 2.2, Krishna starts to speak to Arjuna, and only in 2.11, Krishna starts to impart the knowledge of Gita, because even initially in chapter 2, in 2.2, Krishna only tries to provoke Arjuna by being by kind of mocking him for surrendering to miserly weakness, and then in 2.7, Arjuna is like he completely gives up and he surrenders to Krishna as a disciple. Only then Krishna starts to impart the knowledge of Gita. So in 2.11, Krishna starts by saying asochan anusocastom prajnavadam savaste gatasu nagatasuncha nanu sochanti pandita. So Krishna says that you are trying to act like a very learned person, like a pandita, but you are mourning for that which is not worthy of mourning. So from verse 2.11 to 2.39, Krishna talks about the distinction between spirit, soul, and body, which is the material body, which consists of matter. So from the beginning of chapter 2 itself, Krishna talks about this topic called Sankhya Yoga, which actually covers the distinction between spirit, soul, and the material body. So in verse 2.39, after explaining the, as we know, there are many verses which talk about the eternity of the spirit soul and also the impermanence of the material body. Then in verse 2.39, Krishna says, thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. That is Sankhya. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pratha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So from 2.11 to 2.39, Krishna talks about the knowledge in the context of Sankhya Yoga, that is the distinction between spirit, soul, and the material body. Then from 2.40 onwards, he starts to impart the knowledge in terms of Karma Yoga, that is working without fruitive results. So this discussion regarding spirit, soul versus the material body starts from chapter 2 itself in the Gita. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that the analytical study of the soul and the body has been very graphically explained by Lord Krishna from 2.11 to 2.39. And this descriptive knowledge of the soul and the body from different angles of vision has been described here as Sankhya in terms of the Nirukti dictionary. This Sankhya has nothing to do with the Sankhya philosophy of the atheist Kapila. Long before the impostor Kapila's Sankhya, the Sankhya philosophy was expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the true Lord Kapila, the incarnation of Lord Krishna, who explained it to his mother Devahuti. So as we know in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's this part where Lord Kapila appears as the son of Devahuti, and he explains this entire philosophy of Sankhya Yoga to his mother, which we will also be seeing later regarding the details of it. So it is clearly explained by Lord Kapila that the Purusha or the Supreme Lord is active and that he creates by looking over the Prakriti. This is accepted in the Vedas and in the Gita. The description in the Vedas indicates that the Lord glanced over the Prakriti or nature and impregnated it with atomic individual souls. So here the analogy is such that the Supreme Lord Krishna, as he himself also mentions in chapter 14, I think it's in 14.4, Sarve Yoni Sukanteya Murtiya Sambhavantiya Tasham Brahma Yoni Am Bija Pradapita. So Krishna himself also says in chapter 14 that he is the Pita or father who impregnated the material nature, Prakriti, and through that process, the living entities also became manifest as part of the Prakriti. And then in after chapter 2, in 9.8 also it's stated regarding this Mahat Tattva or the material creation. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So as mentioned earlier, the same set of raw materials, the 24 elements, are always there. It is just that when they become manifest, that stage is called Prakriti, and when it becomes unmanifest, it is called Pradhana. This material world is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has already been explained several times. Like we have also seen this in chapter 7. In 7.4, it is stated, Bhumi Apanalo Vayu Kamano Udyevacha Ahankara Itiyame Binna Prakriti Astada. So regarding the inferior material energy of Krishna, it is also stated in chapter 7. At the creation, the material energy is let loose as the Mahat Tattva, into which the Lord, as his first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu, enters. He lies within the causal ocean and breathes out innumerable universes, and into each universe, the Lord again enters in as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Each universe is in that way created. He still further manifests himself as Shirodakashayi Vishnu, and that Vishnu enters into everything, even into the minute atom. This fact is explained here. He enters into everything. So we have also seen in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, which talks about all the incarnations of Krishna. The chapter itself is titled Krishna, the source of all incarnations. So if as we know, in most of Prabhupada's purports, he always uses the word expansion. However, for the chapter in chapter 3 in first canto of Bhagavatam is titled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. There is a difference between expansion and incarnation. Expansions, they actually begin from the spiritual world itself. Like the first expansion of Krishna is Balaram, then followed by Vasudeva, Shankarsana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and many other expansions, even including the Narayana expansions into the innumerable Vaikuntha planets. So all those are called expansions in the spiritual world. However, when the same spark descends to the material world, it is called avatar or incarnation. So even if you look at chapter 3 of the first canto of Bhagavatam, it starts by describing the Purusha avatar, which begins with the first Purusha avatar is Mahavishnu. So Mahavishnu is the main avatar for creating the material world, the topmost position in the material world. However, Krishna himself, who resides there in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world, he himself is the source of Mahavishnu. So this Mahat Tattva, or the entire material creation, is let loose when Mahavishnu glances over the material nature, and from there the process starts to create the expansions, further expansions of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and Shirodakashayi Vishnu. So when Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is created, or when that expansion emerges from Mahavishnu, for each Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, there is one universe which is created. But even prior to creating each of those universes, the Mahatattva is what prepares everything for the process to begin. So from the interactions of the elements of Mahatattva, the various universes are created, and then all the universes become inhabited by various living entities, taking up various material bodies. Like as we know, there are 84 lakh different species of material bodies. So all the living entities are spirit souls. However, they take up different material bodies and descend to this material world according to their desires from their previous lives. So as far as the living entities are concerned, they are impregnated into this material nature, and as a result of their past deeds, they take different positions. Thus, the activities of this material world begin. The activities of the different species of living beings are begun from the moment of the creation. It is not that all is evolved. The different species of life are created immediately along with the universe. Man, animals, beasts, birds, everything is simultaneously created because whatever desires the living entities had at the last annihilation are again manifested. The state of being in their past life, in the past creation, is simply manifested again. And all this is done simply by his will. That is Krishna's will. So Mahavishnu himself is an expansion or avatar, the Purusha avatar, who creates the material world. But everything happens according to Krishna's will, meaning the process of creation and annihilation. However, when it comes to the living entities themselves, there is no interference by Krishna. Krishna simply acts as a facilitator who creates the entire material world with all the 84 lakh different species of material bodies, which are also Prabhupada calls these 84 lakh material bodies as 84 lakh apartments, because Krishna creates these apartments for the conditioned souls to reside in those apartments according to their desires. Krishna does not interfere in the desires of the living entities. He only acts as a facilitator who provides all the facilities for the living entities, for the conditioned living entities to enjoy. So we also often hear people complaining that if there is God, then why should I suffer and all that? Actually, it is not suffering. Of course, it is a good thing if people realize that they are suffering in this material world, but they tend to realize that only when they experience some form of unhappiness. But even in chapter 15 of the Gita, it is stated that we have to be free from dualities to experience bliss. Compared to bliss, which is permanent, happiness is not permanent. So in the material world, we can only experience happiness, but at the same time, unhappiness is also bound to happen from time to time. Because in the material world, we cannot be free from dualities. However, for those who say that if there is God, then why should I suffer? Actually, it is not. It's not that we are suffering. Actually, it is our personal choice. We have got this present form of human form of body because of our past karmas, and whatever we are doing now we are actually preparing for our future body, whether we get another material body or whether we regain our original spiritual body. It all depends on what we are doing now. Then in chapter 13 of the Gita, also it talks about there are 6 aspects, out of which there are 2 important ones known as Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetra refers to the field of activity and Kshetrajna refers to the knower of the field. So when we talk about the field of activity, simply put, the field of activity refers to the material body. And knower of the body, there are 2 types of knowers or Kshetrajna. One is the individual soul, the spirit soul. Like we are all spirit souls having our own kshetras or material bodies. We all know about our own bodies, but every spirit soul only knows about his or her own field. However, the Paramatma or super soul, he has the knowledge about everything that is happening in all all the fields of the living entities. So in chapter 13, actually in the second half of chapter 13, it talks about the distinction between the two types of knowers. But in the earlier part, it talks about the field of activities itself. And this field of activity also it emerges out of the 24 elements of the entire Mahat. So in the purport, the elements are described from all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns, and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra. The components of this world can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether, known as the Panchamahabhuta, the five gross elements. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the three modes of nature. Then there are five senses for acquiring knowledge, known as Jnana Indriya, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then five working senses, known as Karma Indriya, voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses, there is the mind, which is within and which can be called as the sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether, meaning five Jnana Indriyas, five Karma Indriyas, plus mind, there are 11 senses. Then there are five objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. These five sense objects, they correspond to the five Jnana Indriyas, like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. So this is the importance of studying about the Mahatattva, or the entire principles of material creation regarding the 24 elements. We need to study regarding this topic in depth to understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the five great elements in the gross body. The living symptom represented by consciousness and convictions are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. So roughly, there are five gross elements, the Panchamahabhut, five, followed by the five sense objects, five Jnana Indriya, five Karma Indriya. So there are 20 elements, plus four, that is mind, intelligence, false ego, and consciousness. The five great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of the false ego, technically called the materialistic conception, or tamasa buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the three modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhana. So the same set of raw materials or ingredients of creation, when they are in the unmanifested form, they are called pradhana. When they are manifest, they are called prakriti. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with their interactions should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. So in the next half, we'll be looking at a lot of interesting verses from Bhagavatam for more detailed study of this topic. The body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and at the last stage, it vanishes. So the material body is always subject to these 6 stages. During the 6th stage, it will vanish for sure. However, the spirit soul is eternal. So our delusion is such that being conditioned souls, we are deluded by the modes of material nature, and we are led to thinking that we are always being obsessed with things which are impermanent, like the material body. Therefore, the field is a non-permanent material thing. However, the Kshetrajna, the knower of the field, its proprietor is different. So here, when you talk about Kshetranya or knower, it refers to the spirit soul, the individual spirit soul, that is us, and also the Paramatma within ourselves. So the Paramatma knows about all the living entities and also their field of activities. However, uh, we are supposed to know, like being Kshetranya of our own field of activity, we are supposed to know about our own body. However, uh, that's not the case with the vast majority of people, because we always tend to give more importance to the impermanent material body. Though we are supposed to be the Kshetrajna, the eternal Kshetrajna or knower of the field, we tend to identify ourselves with the non-permanent material body. So those are just some brief details about related to the Mahatattva topic from the Gita. As mentioned in Prabhupada's purport also, in the Gita, there are not many in-depth details about those 24 elements, but they are discussed more in-depth in Bhagavatam, especially in second canto onwards. In the 5th chapter of second canto, there's this conversation between Narada Muni and his father, Brahmadev. So Narada Muni asked Lord Brahma about the process of creation. He asked Brahma how he created the living entities, like in the context of the material world. However, Lord Brahma himself admits to Narada that he does not create anything, but he simply rediscovers whatever has been created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So in 2.5.18, Brahma says, the Supreme Lord is pure, spiritual, form transcendental to all material qualities, yet for the sake of creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature, called goodness, passion, and ignorance. These three modes of material nature, being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities, put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. So even in Gita, chapter 15, 15.7, Krishna says, Mame Vamso Jivaloki, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, Manashashtani Prakrishtani Karsati. Krishna says that all the living entities are eternal fragmental parts of the transcendental body of Krishna, but Krishna himself says that we are suffering in this material world due to our desires, and being conditioned souls, we are actually conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Oh Brahmana Narada, this Lord Brahma is addressing Narada. The superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. So Brahma himself admits that he himself is controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, but not just Brahma, but actually Brahma himself is the topmost Jiva Tattva, the topmost living entity in the material world. So all others are actually lower than Brahma. But if we look at the demons like Hiranyakashipu, so those demons wanted eternal life, and they ended up trying to get the boon from Brahma, not knowing that he himself is under the control of Krishna. So it is coming to think of it, it's extremely amusing because these demons wanted to defeat Krishna by getting boon from someone who was under the control of Krishna. However, we all know the results of, the fate of those demons. However, even in today's world, there are, well, maybe not as bad as them, but there are aspiring demons. There are these people who proudly claim that they are descendants of Ravana also. Uh, so even that, even such things are happening also because of the will of Krishna, because even those deluded souls are under the control of Krishna, whether they like it or not. Like from the Gita, also Krishna says, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So these so-called rationalists, atheists, and even some people who claim to be descendants of demons, they are all trying to deny the existence of Krishna. But according to Krishna, they are behaving in such ways also because of his will, because even the modes of material nature are under the control of Krishna, and living entities or conditioned souls are under the control of the three puppeteers, the three modes of material nature. So even for those who say that there is no God, everything comes from nature, and all sorts of other nonsense, they are also doing such things due to the will of Krishna, because it is their choice to be trapped in this material world, and they are thinking that they are enjoying. However, Krishna does not interfere in their personal choice and freedom. So it is entirely up to them to remain deluded by the three modes. Then the conversation between Brahma and Narada continues. Brahma says, the Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. So after creating the three modes of material nature, time was created. Then after the incarnation of the first Purusha, the Mahat, or the principles of material creation take place, and then the time is manifested. In cause of time, three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances, they transform into activities. So the entire storehouse of the ingredients required for material creation is called the Mahat. So all the ingredients originate from there in the form of the 24 elements. Then everything else is manifested. So the three modes of material nature are also like byproducts of the Mahat. Material activities are caused by the Mahat being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. So the initial activity starts with the agitation of Mahat, and it's like a chain reaction from then onwards. The self-centered materialistic ego thus being transformed into three features known as the three modes. They continue to proceed in the process of creation. Materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing the bondage of material existence. So the main reason for this entire material creation to become manifest is the false ego, which is deeply rooted in our desire to be Ishvara and Purusha. So this is also explained in the Gita from verses 24 to 27, like how due to the false ego, like due to the desire to be Ishvara and Purusha like Krishna, we tend to develop our false ego, and because of that, the entire material creation was created by Krishna through his Purusha avatars for us to enjoy. However, after descending to this material world, we and because of the conditioning by the three modes, we have totally forgot our relationship with Krishna, and even sometimes it even goes to the extent of challenging Krishna himself. So in Gita 7.24, it's stated, unintelligent men who don't know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they don't know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So being caught in the inferior material energy of Krishna, it works to such an extent where we tend to deny that Krishna exists when actually we are under his control through his inferior material energy. We are being controlled by his energy, but we tend to deny his existence. However, Krishna explains, I never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I'm covered by my internal potency, and therefore they don't know that I'm unborn and infallible. So there are like two layers of covering which covers the foolish and unintelligent. So though such people tend to call themselves rationalists or atheists, uh, actually their intelligence is covered by the material energy, and at the same time there's another covering which is used by Krishna himself through his internal potency called Yogamaya. The material covering is called Mahamaya, and Krishna himself covers himself uh, through his Yogamaya internal potency, which only he can choose to reveal according to his desire, like what he did for Arjuna. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. So here, uh, Krishna is saying that it is not easy for the conditioned living entities to know him due to the strength of the inferior material energy of Krishna. O son of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, risen from desire and hate. So these are the elements which condition the living entities in such a way that we come to be known as conditioned souls. So if we can liberate ourselves from this material conditioning, then we can fully realize Krishna. However, that takes Krishna himself says in 7.14 that his material energy is extremely strong to be overcome. And therefore, that explains why a lot of people tend to deny the existence of Krishna, although they are being dominated by the material energy of Krishna. So again, this is the continuation of the purport of 2.5.24. The self-centered impersonalist, without a clear conception of the personality of Godhead, concludes in his own way that the personality of Godhead takes a material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. So this is similar to what we saw in 7.24, where Krishna himself says that less intelligent people, like the impersonalists, tend to think that Krishna was impersonal then he took a personal form in the form of Krishna, who descended to earth. And then after going back to the spiritual abode, then Krishna takes his impersonal form. So that is the understanding of the less intelligent impersonalist. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues, even though he is seen to be very interested in the Vedic literatures such as the Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. So here, when we talk about Brahma Sutras, this Shankara Bhashya is the most prominent thing. Of course, it is quite ironic because the flawed version is always known to be the most popular version. However, in other Vaishnava Sampradaya, like the Sri Vaishnavas, they have the Sri Bhashya, and even in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we have this Govinda Bhashya regarding Brahma Sutras. The same set of sutras were interpreted differently by different schools. However, the most dangerous form of interpretation by the impersonalist school, unfortunately, is it is seen as the most prominent one. However, we since we belong to the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, actually we don't even have to study the Brahma Sutras because we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is known as the natural commentary for Brahma Sutras. So from the Srimad Bhagavatam also, a lot of evidences are there to prove the notion of the personality of Godhead. So simply by following the Parampara's knowledge, we can get the proper knowledge, and there's no need to be carried away by the so-called prominent scriptures by other schools. This ignorance of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to ignorance of the mixture of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. Sachidananda Vigraha. So we have also covered this topic titled Supreme Absolute Truth in one of our previous sessions, in which we have also seen various evidences regarding the notion of the personality of Godhead versus impersonalism. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee. So even when there are these atheists, impersonalists who don't really understand the personality of Godhead, actually that is also due to his will, because only he decides of choosing to reveal himself. Only he decides whether he wants to reveal himself to his aspiring devotees or not. Like Arjuna was chosen by Krishna not just to impart the knowledge of Gita, but Krishna also revealed the Virat Rupa to him. So because that was also due to his own will, that's why he chose Arjuna. And it is not very easy to achieve such an exalted position like Arjuna. And therefore, although the so-called scholars of the school of impersonalism, although they claim to be very learned scholars, they still cannot realize the true knowledge, because it is Krishna who decides whether he wants to reveal the knowledge to them or not. Like it is also stated in Gita 15.15 by Krishna himself. Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hriti sannivista matta smridin jnanam apoanam cha. Vedesya sarve ahame vedya vedanta krit veda videva chaham. So Krishna says that from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So it is he who decides whether uh, he wants to reveal the knowledge or not. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yogamaya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aid-de camp by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. So this is the covering which Krishna himself uses to not reveal himself to the impersonalists or atheists. Such a bewildered human being is described as Muda or grossly ignorant because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. If the Lord takes a form or material shape from his original impersonal feature, then it means that he is born and changeable from impersonal to personal. But he is not changeable, nor does he ever take a new birth like a conditioned soul. In Gita chapter 4, Krishna says that he is unborn. Ajo Pisan Avyatma. So he is unborn and he is eternal. However, as he descends to the material world, taking a human-like form, then as stated by Krishna also in chapter 9, a lot of mudas tend to mistake him for being like a human being, like a fallible human being. So here it is clearly stated that Krishna cannot be impersonal, because if he is impersonal, then it means that he is born. However, Krishna himself says that he is unborn, Aja. So that itself proves that even by Krishna's own words, it proves the personality of Krishna, thus demolishing the idea of impersonalism. The conditioned soul may take a form birth after birth due to his conditional existence in matter, but the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism. So this is what Krishna talks about in 9.11, Gita 9.11. Avajanati mamuta manushim tanu ashritam parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Mudas fail to understand Krishna as the source of all creation. They tend to think that he is like he's just like another human being. By the will of the Lord, the impersonalist, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma features of the Lord, remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever existent Narayana, transcendental to all material creation. So these so-called scholars, they may understand the Brahman Paramatma features, but since they belong to this impersonal form, impersonal school of thought, they ultimately they fail to realize the complete feature of Bhagavan. Then regarding the continuation of how the elements of Mahat Tattva are manifested from the darkness of false ego, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. So sky is the first of the Panchamahabhut. Its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. So first, the sky is created as the first element of the five gross elements, and then sound is the first of the five subtle elements. The five elements, namely sky, air, fire, water, and earth, are all but different qualities of the darkness of false ego. This means that the false ego, in the sum total form of Mahatattva, is generated from the marginal potency of the Lord, and due to this false ego of lording it over the material creation, ingredients are generated for the false enjoyment of the living being. So the Mahat is the sum total of the entire material energy of Krishna, from which all the ingredients which are required for living entities to enjoy are created. The living being is practically the dominating factor over the material elements as the enjoyer, though the background is the Supreme Lord. Factually, save and accept the Lord, no one can be called the enjoyer. But the living entity falsely desires to become the enjoyer. This is the origin of false ego. When the bewildered living being desires this, the shadow elements are generated by the will of the Lord, and the living entities are allowed to run after them as after phantasmagoria. So even in chapter 7 of the Gita, it is stated that in 7.4, it is stated regarding the inferior material energy of Krishna. Then in 7.5, it is stated regarding the marginal energy, where we as conditioned souls, we belong to the marginal potency of Krishna because we are like in the middle between the inferior material energy and the superior spiritual energy. Though we originally belong to the superior spiritual energy of Krishna, since we are conditioned by the three modes of material nature, so we are actually in the marginal part of Krishna's energy. So by going back to Godhead, we will regain our position of being part of the superior spiritual energy. However, due to our desires of wanting to become controllers and enjoyers, Ishvara and Purusha, we have developed this false ego. It is called false ego because uh, we are trying to delude ourselves into thinking that we can enjoy in this material world. And to facilitate our delusion, just for us to enjoy, Krishna facilitates by creating this material world, and also by giving us the 84 lakh apartments for us to falsely enjoy. However, it is not the living entities which enjoy in the material world, because conditioned living entities are always under the influence of the three modes of material nature. So though the three modes of material nature are also byproducts of the material world, the Prakriti. So even in that sense, the living entities are the ones who uh, who are like being puppeteered by the three puppeteers of the three modes of material nature. So even if we desire to be enjoyers, and even if we are led into thinking that we are actually enjoying in the material world, but that's not the case, and that's why it is called false ego. So we saw that the out of the five Panchamahabhut, the five gross elements, sky is the first element, and at the same time, the first subtle element, sound, is also created. So it is also stated that sound is the representation of the actual object, as the sound produced speaking of the object gives an idea of the description of the object. Therefore, sound is the subtle characteristic of the object. Similarly, sound representation of the Lord in terms of his characteristics is the complete form of the Lord. The sound representation of the Lord is non-different from the Lord himself, because the Lord and his representation in sound are absolute knowledge. So this is a very special significance of the element of sound, because apart from sky being the first of the five gross material elements, sound is also the first of the subtle elements. So from there, we have also seen in many of Prabhupada's purports regarding how the holy name of the Lord is non-different from the Lord himself. So that's why the process of chanting was emphasized by Lord Chaitanya as the biggest cure for Kali Jivas. Lord Chaitanya has instructed us that in the holy name of the Lord, as sound representation of the Lord, all the potencies of the Lord are invested. Thus, one can immediately enjoy the association of the Lord by the pure vibration of the sound representation of his holy name, and the concept of the Lord is immediately manifested before the pure devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, is not aloof from the Lord even for a moment. The holy name of the Lord, as recommended in the Shastras, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, may therefore be constantly chanted by the devotee, aspiring to be constantly in touch with the Supreme Lord. So, constant chanting means constant association with the Lord. One who is thus able to associate with the Lord is sure to be delivered from the darkness of the created world, which is a product of false ego. So, ironically, we can see that in the process of material creation, sky is the first object out of the 5 gross elements, and sound is the first in the out of the 5 subtle elements. So we descended to this material world due to our desires, and we are actually in a diseased condition due to this material bondage. However, the cure for this disease also comes from another material element called the sound. The sound vibration of the holy name of the Lord can be the cure for our material disease. So it is the same material element, sound, but when it is used in a spiritual way, it can cure our material disease. Then in 2.5.26 in Bhagavatam, still in the conversation between Brahma and Narada, so the other elements are also discussed, like after creation of sky as the first of the 5 gross elements and sound being the first of the 5 subtle elements, the other elements are also created subsequently. So after sky, the air is generated, and then all the other gross elements like fire, water, and finally earth is created as the 5th gross element. And during the creation of each of the gross elements, every a subtle element is also generated. Like after creation of sky, sound is generated. After creation of air, the subtle element of touch is created. So towards the end, the gross element of earth consists of all the subtle elements. So it is explained in the purport. The whole process of creation is an act of gradual evolution and development from one element to another, reaching up to the variegatedness of the earth, as so many trees, plants, mountains, rivers, reptiles, birds, animals, and varieties of human beings. The quality of sense perception is also evolutionary, namely generated from sound, then touch, from touch to form. Taste and odor are also generated along with the gradual development of sky, air, fire, water, and earth. So we saw that the sky was the first of the 5 gross elements. After creation of the sky, sound emerged. Then after creation of air, it was touch, uh, the subtle element of touch. Then fire was the 3rd gross element, followed by the subtle element of form. Then came the 4th gross element, water, followed by the subtle element of taste. And then finally, when the 5th gross element, earth, was created, it was followed by odor as the 5th subtle element. So up to this point, we have already seen the 5 gross elements and 5 subtle elements. So there are 10 out of 24 up to this point. They are all mutually the cause and effect of one another, but the original cause is the Lord himself in plenary portion, as Mahavishnu lying in the causal water of the Mahat Tattva. As such, Lord Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as the cause of all causes, and this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 10.8. So Krishna is described as the cause of all causes. Mahavishnu being the cause for the Mahatattva, the entire creation of the material world, but the cause of the cause, that is the cause of Mahavishnu himself, is Krishna. And Krishna himself explains in Gita 10.8, Aham sarvasya prabho matta sarvam pravastate iti matva bhajante mam buddhabhava samanita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So being trapped in the material world, there's always this tendency to believe that a lot of people tend to think that Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, because there's this widespread perception that Vishnu is the topmost, because that is the perception in the material world. However, from the scriptures, we know that Krishna himself is the source of Vishnu. And this we have also seen in our one of our previous sessions, titled Supreme Absolute Truth. We saw the differences between expansion and avatar or incarnation. We also saw the differences between Krishna Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, Shiva Tattva, and Jiva Tattva. So all the evidences from scriptures prove that Krishna is the cause of all causes. Then the continuation of the purport for 2.5.26 to 29 regarding the first 10 elements. The qualities of sense perception are fully represented in the earth, and they are manifested in other elements to a lesser extent. In the sky, there is sound only, because as we saw earlier, the first gross element was the sky, followed by the creation of the first subtle element, that was sound. But it was followed by the air. But for the air, the subtle elements were sound and touch. So towards the point where it comes to the fifth gross element, which is earth, it included the entire combination of all the five subtle elements, like sound, touch, shape, or form, then taste and odor. Therefore, on the earth, there is a full display of variatedness of life, which is originally started with the basic principle of air. Diseases of the body take place due to derangement of air within the earthly body of the living beings. Mental diseases result from special derangement of the air within the body, and as such, yogi exercises especially beneficial to keep the air in order so that diseases of the body become almost nil by such exercises. So the material body is actually it is home to all the other subtle elements, and the material body itself is created from the elements of earth, which covers all the other subtle elements also. So continuing the conversation between Brahma and Navata, so we have seen 10 elements so far, the 5 gross and 5 subtle elements. From the mode of goodness, the mind is generated. So this is the 11th element now, becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, control of air, the sun god, the father of Daksha Prajapati, the Ashwini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of the Adityas, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati, all come into existence. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like ears, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. So we saw that first the five we saw the first five gross material elements, then the five subtle elements, then the 11th element was the mind, created from the mode of goodness, and now from the mode of passion we have the 10 uh, 10 senses consisting of five jnana indriyas and five karma indriyas. So up to this point, we have seen the 21 elements. When it is combined with intelligence, false ego, and the living energy or consciousness, it becomes 24 in total. So there's more elaboration given in the purport. The living condition in material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. Intelligence to counteract the hard struggle for existence is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge, and the living energy maintains himself by manipulating the active organs, like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs headed by intelligence and the living energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described before. So all the 10 jnana indriyas and karma indriyas and also intelligence, these are all products of the mode of passion. And that is why we, especially human beings, we tend to always be, we are more inclined to be dominated by the mode of passion. Like we are always involved in fruitive activities. So this is just the summary of all the 24 elements. So from the Mahat, the entire storehouse of the ingredients are there in the Mahat, and they are all manifested as Prakriti. So there are five working senses, Karma Indriya, five knowledge acquiring senses, Jnana Indriya, the five gross elements, fire, water, earth, air, ether, five subtle elements, form, taste, smell, touch, sound, and followed by the mind, intelligence, false ego, and consciousness as the 24th element. Then after describing all the elements, Brahma tells Narada that the forms of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind, and modes of nature, are not assembled. So this is actually the primary process. The 24 elements have to be created, they have to be manifest in order for the material bodies to be created, like the 84 lakh apartments. So the Mahatattva represents the primary process of creation, which leads to the secondary process of creating the 84 lakh apartments, the various species of material bodies. Every living entity is a spiritual spark, part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and by the kindness of the Lord, for the Father is kind to his sons, the individual living beings are given a little freedom to act according to their will to lord it over the material nature. Just as a father gives some playthings to the crying child to satisfy him, the whole material creation is made possible by the will of the Lord to allow the bewildered living entities to lord it over things as they desire, although under the control of the agent of the Lord. So our Father, Lord Krishna, he has given this plaything called the material nature to satisfy us. However, he is always anxious to have us back in the spiritual world. But due to our delusion or being dominated by the modes of material nature, we are too obsessed with this plaything called the material world. And we also go to the extent of saying that there's no God and everything comes from nature. The living entities are exactly like small children playing the material field under the control of the maidservant of the Lord nature. They accept the Maya or the maidservant as all in all, and thus wrongly conceive the supreme truth to be feminine, Goddess Durga. The foolish, childlike materialist cannot reach beyond the conception of the maidservant, material nature, but the intelligent grown-up sons of the Lord know well that all the acts of material nature are controlled by the Lord, just as a maidservant is under the control of the master, the father of the undeveloped children. So the maidservant here refers to the goddess of Maya. The parts of the body, such as the senses, are the creation of the Mahat, and when they are assembled by the will of the Lord, the material body comes into existence, and the living entity is allowed to use it for further activities. So this is the significance of understanding about the Mahat, because that is where it all begins. All the raw materials or ingredients for the entire creation is actually there in the Mahat. And as mentioned earlier, it represents the primary process of creation. So only after the Mahat being agitated by material activities, the entire collection of the 24 elements become manifest, and after the primary process, the secondary process of creation takes place, where the various species of material bodies are created using the output of the primary process. So from there, we get these 84 lakh species of material bodies known as the 84 lakh apartments, because we as conditioned souls, we are the ones who desire to live in all these different apartments, like the material body of an aquatic bird, quadruped, or the human species. Thus, when all these become assembled by force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and secondary causes of creation. Thus, all the universes remain thousands of aeons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of all living beings entering into each of them caused them to be fully animated. The Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. So here Hiranyagarbha refers to Garbhodarshai Vishnu, who is in charge of every universe, and the source for Garbhodarshai Vishnu is Mahavishnu. So it is Garbhodarshai Vishnu who assumes the Virat Rupa to take care of each universe. So that was the conversation between Brahma and Narada in second canto, chapter 5. And then even in third canto, chapter 10, there's this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. So sage Maitreya explains the same topic to Vidura regarding the Mahat and the primary process of creation. However, he describes it in the context of the 9 divisions of creation. So sage Maitreya says there are 9 different kinds of creations besides the one which naturally occurs due to the interactions of the modes. There are 3 kinds of annihilations due to eternal time, the material elements, and the quality of one's work. Of the 9 creations, the first one is the creation of the Mahat, or the sum total of the material ingredients when the modes interact due to the presence of the Supreme Lord. So it all begins from the creation of the Mahat. In the second, the false ego is generated, in which the material ingredients, material knowledge, and material activities rise. The sense perceptions are created in the third creation, and from these, the elements are generated. The fourth creation is the creation of knowledge and of working capacity. So this is similar to what we saw previously, like from the Mahat, the byproducts, the meaning the modes of material nature are created, and then come the gross material elements, followed by the subtle elements, then the jnana indriyas and karma indriyas, The fifth creation is that of the controlling deities by the interaction of the mode of goodness, of which the mind is sum total. So we also saw that mind was produced by the mode of goodness. The sixth creation is the ignorant darkness of the living entity, by which the master acts as a fool. All the above natural creations are natural creations by the external energy of the Lord. Now hear from me about the creations by Brahma, who is an incarnation of the mode of passion, and who in the matter of creation has the brain like that of the personality of Godhead. So these 9 divisions of creation are divided into 2. The first 6 are the product of the external energy of Krishna, and the remaining 3 are the ones which were directly created by Brahma. That is the from the 7th to 9th creation. The 7th creation is that of the immovable entities, which are 6 kinds: the fruit trees without flowers, trees and plants. So immovables are generally trees, and actually we saw this earlier in the verse regarding the 84 lakh apartments. So here it is stated, Jalaja Nava Lakshani, Stavram Lakshami, Krimyo Rutra Sankhya, Pakshinam Tasalakshanam, Trimshal Lakshani Pasava, Chatur Lakshani Manusha. So here Jalaja Nava Lakshani means 9 lakh aquatics. Stavaram Laksha Vimshati. Stavaram means the non-moving entities like trees and plants, 20 lakhs. Krimyo Rutra Sankhya, 11 lakh insects and germs. Pakshinam Dasalakshanam, 10 lakh birds. Trimshal Lakshani Pasava. Pashus are the quadrupeds or 4-legged animals, 30 lakhs. And Chatur Lakshani Manusha, 4 lakh human species. So all these varieties are actually created by Brahma. And that is what is mentioned by sage Maitreya here. Then after creating the immovable entities, the 8th creation is that of the lowest species of life, and they are of different varieties, numbering 28. They are all extensively foolish and ignorant. They know their desirables by smell, but are unable to remember anything within the heart. So this is actually referring to the animal species. So the seventh creation is mostly related to the plants and trees. Then the 8th creation is related to the animals. Then the 9th creation, that of the human beings. So these 9 divisions of creation are described by sage Maitreya to Vidura in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam, chapter 10. So this is the summary of the 9 divisions of creation. The first 6 are created by the external energy of Krishna. So this is what we saw from the previous verses. The first 6 are from the external energy of Krishna, and the remaining 3 are directly created by Brahma with his creative potency, consisting of the plants, animals, and human beings. And then also in 3rd canto, chapter 26 and 27 are also very significant, because these chapters deal with the conversation between Lord Kapila and his mother Devahuti. Also regarding the same topic related to Mahat and creation, but in the context of Sankhya Yoga. So even in these 2 chapters, Lord Kapila explains much more in depth compared to what we saw previously, regarding like also starting from the process of the creation of Mahat and towards the process of creation of the Virat Rupa and so on. So in 3.26.9, Devahuti inquires from Lord Kapila to kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies, for both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. So to which Lord Kapila replies, actually Lord Kapila himself is the incarnation of Krishna. born as son to Devahuti. So he explains to Devahuti, the unmanifested eternal combination of the three modes is the cause of the manifest state and is called Pradhana. It is called Prakriti when in the manifested stage of existence. So the same set of elements or the raw materials in different states, they are called differently. In the unmanifest state, it's called Pradhana, and when it is manifest, it's called Prakriti. The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, and the 5 outward organs of action are known as the Pradhana. So here we can clearly see the 24 elements, 5 gross, 5 subtle, 5 knowledge gathering senses, 5 working senses, 20 plus 4 internal senses, mind, intelligence, false ego, and consciousness. There are 5 gross elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. There are also 5 subtle elements, smell, taste, color, touch, and sound. The senses for acquiring knowledge and the organs for action. Jnana Indriya, Karma Indriya, namely the auditory sense, the sense of taste, the tactile sense, the sense of sight, the sense of smell, and the active organs for speaking, working, traveling, generating, and evacuating. So the 10 senses of Jnana Indriya and Karma Indriya are explained here. The internal subtle senses are experienced as having 4 aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. Contaminated here refers to the consciousness of us being the conditioned souls. Distinctions between them can be made only by different functions since they represent different characteristics. So in these verses, the 24 elements are also explained by Lord Kapila. Then in chapter 27, Devahuti listens to all the explanation of Lord Kapila in chapter 26, and in 27, she further inquires, my dear Brahmana, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? So we being conditioned souls, though we are actually spirit souls who are part and parcel of Krishna, part and parcel of his superior spiritual energy, due to being conditioned souls, we are always attracted to this material nature. And material nature also always attracts us. So Srila Prabhupada always explains this as the tug of war, where we are always attracted to material nature for our sense gratification, and at the same time, even material nature tries to attract us. Though we try to progress in our spiritual life, to progress towards Krishna in our spiritual journey, material nature still tries to attract us towards it. So that is what Devahuti is inquiring from Lord Kapila, to which he replies, as there is no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, or of water and its taste, there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. Hence, even though he is the passive performer of all activities, how can there be freedom for the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? So here Lord Kapila is clearly emphasizing the strong domination of this material bondage, how material nature binds us, how material nature binds conditioned souls. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again, since its cause has not ceased. So this is what the so-called scholars do, because simply by knowing about the material nature and its fundamental principles, such scholarly knowledge may still not be sufficient, because it will still not liberate us from the material bondage. because it is important to eliminate the cause, and the cause can only be eliminated through devotional service. As explained by Lord Kapila, he says, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. So here, there are two keywords here, about me or from me. Krishna Katha can be categorized into two categories. Katha about Krishna, that is Srimad Bhagavatam, and also Katha from Krishna, that is Bhagavad Gita. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. So ultimately, we should also strive to engage in devotional service in addition to knowing about the fundamental principles of material nature. Something similar is also stated by Krishna in the Gita itself. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So in summary, despite knowing about the fundamental principles of material creation, material nature, and all that, it is very important for us to realize that we are not this body, we are spirit souls, we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we must also realize that we are eternal servants of Krishna. And in order to liberate ourselves from this material bondage, we should always engage in devotional service so that we can go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So in today's session, we saw in depth regarding the Mahat Tattva, mainly the 24 elements of material creation. So in addition to knowing about these theoretical principles, the aspect of Sankhya Yoga, the distinction between material body and spirit soul, ultimately it should all ideally culminate into engaging ourselves in devotional service to liberate ourselves from the material bondage. So that's all for today. Thank you for attending the session. Any questions or comments? Hello.
Yes, Prabhu. No questions.
No questions.
Yeah, from me.
Oh, okay. So thank you all for attending, and we'll meet again next week. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Nice class.
Thank you.